Arsenal have been so resolute and
This guy.
consistent in what they've achieved. And the only thing second to the number of points Arsenal picked up is the amount of clean sheets they've picked up along the way as well. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. And I find it challenging to not feel good about Arsenal right now, mate. How about you?
Tom, you said it there, man. I mean, obviously, I think within the premise of a season, there's many twists and turns and bumps and bruises, and a 4 point gap that we've got in the table. It could turn to a point before we next kick a ball, and it's gonna fluctuate. There's gonna be twists and turns. But even if I personally feel, even if you've got concerns about Arsenal Football Club at this moment in time, it's like the cons are here, the pros are up here. It's like, I think one thing that I believe goes over people's minds is, we're 11 Premier League games into the season. We're not in our final form. We've been amassing points on the board. Our attack, I wouldn't say it hasn't clicked yet, but we haven't had players available. Our attackers, bar Trossard, ain't really gone through those kind of higher echelons of form. But everything is positive, man. We've put our best foot forward. I'm not here to say we're the best team in the world and things like that, but we've got a very big chance of winning the Premier League. And I can't sit here, Tom, and tell you what silverware we're going to win. But at this moment in time, we're in 4 competitions, and I've never been more confident that in May of 2026, we're going to win something. And I don't want to be that guy, yeah, because to a degree, I think it's a bit of a cop-out. But if we go all the way back to August and I offered you like purely all of these W's, 2 draws and an L, and the bumps and bruises have come against an informed side like Sunderland, where I'm not saying we couldn't have won, but you can't win them all. They're doing quite well. And if you can't win, don't lose. Yeah, we could have done better against City, but it is still Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. And courtesy of a free kick, we lost to the current Premier League champions, innit? And I'm not suggesting we couldn't have done better, but if I offered anybody this points tally, or better yet, this platform going into after the international break, they're a liar, in my opinion, if they tell me that they wouldn't have had it. And like Tom, as you said it there, like the clean sheets, the shots on target, and the very fact that we're crying about dropping points against an informed team like Sunderland, we're crying about conceding goals for the first time in a gazillion years, really, against Sunderland. It speaks volumes of what we're doing and what we're accomplishing. So credit to everybody connected to Arsenal Football Club. And as I said, there's no guarantees in life, but Arsenal fans, like, keep the faith. The club and the players, because they're the ones that got to go and do it, they've given you every reason to be optimistic. So then it leads me to ask you, what do you make, before we like central back onto Arsenal, like, what do you make of City and Liverpool?
Well, it's funny because I was thinking as you were kind of running through those results, if you'd have said to me, if you'd have showed me that graphic, say in August, like you said, and I'd seen that we'd lost to Liverpool in that run as the only team, I would not have made the assumption that they'd be 8 points behind us at this stage.
Exactly.
I would have assumed that they would be right up there with us, not sitting in 8th place, 8 points behind Arsenal. So that is, it's in some ways surprising. I will say, and it is on record from my shows over the summer, that I felt that Liverpool's spending was incredibly unbalanced. It almost felt like a kid who'd unlocked a financial boost on career mode, how they approached their window. Because they just went through this spending spree of looking at who's like the best player that we can get without really thinking about the impacts on their squad necessarily. And if I was, in charge of Liverpool's recruitment in the summer, and I had, 250 million, let's say, that eventually got spent on Wirtz and Isak, having already got the other players, let's say Ekitike had been signed, I would have looked at that and thought, well, we desperately need another centre-half to cover Van Dijk and Canate, which they did go and get in the young Italian guy that came in, but obviously is now injured. But still, it wasn't necessarily like a Mark Guehi level addition.
And they wanted Guehi, so you could argue they wanted 2 centre-halves.
They did indeed. They did know. It's not even arguably. You're right. You're absolutely right. They did want 2 defenders, and not only that, but I think they've needed a strong number 6. They wanted Zubimendi the season before last. They haven't gone out and signed potentially a replacement. I even looked at like Spurs getting Palhinha on loan and thought that is a player that could improve Liverpool's defensive midfield role for this season. But they decided against that and spent huge money on a player in Isak who, if he's coming in for that level of money, he's got to stay fit, first of all, which is always a big question mark about Isak and has been. Ekitike started the season so well as well that I thought, they don't need to sign an Isak. They could go out and sign like a young centre forward as well, or an older maybe option as well, just to replace Nunez, or not even sell Nunez. They could keep it. I know the passing of Diogo Jota, of course, very sad
R.I.P.
as it was, has been an unquantifiable impact on that team. And I always kind of talk about Liverpool almost as if that situation didn't happen at times, because I just feel as though you can't quantify grief. You can't quantify that level of impact to a team. And so I almost feel that trying to quantify it whenever you have a debate about where Liverpool are, what they're doing or what they're spending or how their business is working, it's difficult ever to kind of put that into a box and try and
100%.
work out how it's going to affect things. So I kind of keep it to the football when discussing Liverpool, and then in comparison to Arsenal and City. But on City are always a team for me that we're going to be relying on one man, and that one man was Erling Haaland. And this season he has been and looks to be maybe in the best iteration of him that we have seen so far.
Yep.
And that's a scary thing as an Arsenal supporter, because if Arsenal don't win the league this season, I don't think it'll be because of Manchester City. I think it'll be because of Erling Haaland. And also us as well, and how we affect things. I think it was someone asked Arteta in the press conference recently, is the only team that can stop Arsenal winning the league this season Arsenal? Because it just seems as though that's kind of that classic meme. Yeah, and I think that it's got merit to it. It's that classic meme of the guy behind the guy holding a metal rod, and every label is Arsenal, and that's almost
exactly yeah.
So if Arsenal are to lose or not to win the league this season, I think it will be one where we can own, even though those two teams have got quality and strength and problems. I think the only reason that Arsenal don't win the league this season is something to do with us, not to do with those two.
So how do you quantify who's the favourites for the Premier League? Because I feel in these 11 or so games in the Premier League, I would say from the start of the season up until the Newcastle game, people would say Arteta's got cowardly tactics. The players are doing this and they're not doing that. Kind of going back to Liverpool. Liverpool haven't rested on their laurels. They're so good. They've brought in all of these players. They're doing this and that. City are inconsistent. I would say after the Newcastle game, up until a ball was kicked against Sunderland, I feel everybody, not even Arsenal fans, I feel like the media and the landscape around Arsenal is they're inevitable. Nobody can stop them, blah, blah, blah. Since the Sunderland game, which isn't a great result, but isn't a bad result, all things conceded, I think it's almost like people still have Arsenal as the favourites, but they're like, you know what, a 4-point gap that could turn to 1 if results go south against Liverpool. Against Spurs, kind of what you said there. Haaland can drag City. City have the know-how. They've got Pep Guardiola. So it's almost like people are now shifting the conversation to Man City. But like at this moment in time, where do you place the favourites?
So at the start of the season, my favourites were Liverpool just because they were champions. And they added, like, even though I'm critical of the business they done, you know, if you spend 400 million on players and you're the champions, you should be the favourites, you know, for the next season.
Especially the calibre of players they brought in with the Isaacs and the Verts and all that stuff.
100%. And so I'm still surprised how far they have dropped off. And I'm surprised that kind of criticisms I had of last season of Arne Slot have in some ways come true. I thought that they got very lucky last season to be champions in a way because of what happened to Arsenal and City. And they didn't really have a viable challenger because of what happened to both of their two challengers. So this time around, Arsenal, I think at this point now, I don't think there could be too much debate that as we stand right now, Arsenal have to be labelled favourites as we go in, and you know, opinions change and landscapes change and context change, and the context has changed now that Arsenal, I think, have to be put down as favourites because of how strong they look, because of the fact that even though they've had, of the three teams, the worst injury record of all of them, by some distance, I would argue as well. You know, the volume of players Arsenal have lost, the key players that Arsenal have lost, particularly into key areas like centre forward, with all three centre forwards being lost for that trip to Sunderland and nearly coming out of there with a win still despite that. I think that we have to go down as the favourites for the league right now. I don't know about the Champions League because I still think there are other teams in that competition like Bayern Munich who look incredibly impressive. PSG, you know, even though they lost to Bayern, still a very, very good outfit. And Barcelona can turn over anybody as well on their day as well. Real Madrid, less certain about them, and you've still got Liverpool and Man City who in a cup competition, you never know what, you know, they're going to produce. So I think that Arsenal right now should be comfortable with the label of favourite, should be comfortable sitting where they are. And I think that I've got a team that are ready as well, more than anything, despite not having the experience to go on and win it.
I think you're bang on the money, and I think, you know, like you just said there with experience, City have obviously, I mean, City have done it. Liverpool have done it under two managers. We haven't. But then I always flip it and say, not questioning the other teams, but it's like, could an advantage, and I genuinely think, could an advantage be the hunger? Because collectively, our players, unfortunately, haven't won silverware. Whatever way we dress it, in the last 3 years, we've been so close, but so far with different contexts and things. And that fire burning, that never doing it, for me, could be an advantage. And I'm comfortable being favourites. I'm comfortable people have us as favourites because I think that stuff fluctuates. I think all you've got to do is just win games. And I think a byproduct of how people are talking more positive about our club versus the couple of weeks into the season is because we've just been handling business. You know, what you do on the field dictates all the other talking points. And I believe in my manager, believe in what Bert has done. I think the players have this hunger. I think they've shown me a lot of maturity. I think there's elements of us being a bit inevitable this season. I think Sunderland was, I wouldn't say a bad day at the office, but for one of the best defensive sides in Europe, I would argue Arteta and the players wouldn't be happy with the goals we conceded and obviously getting ourselves back into the game and whatnot. But Sunderland have been doing quite well. The only thing I would say is I just wish that, as much as I'm positive about the club, I know you can't have it all. Forget Sunderland. If we just have taken 4 to 6 points of City or Liverpool, for City and Liverpool, sorry, I'd be even more bullish. I want to ask you a question, yeah. Like, obviously, we want to win Prems, we want to win champs, we want to win it all. But I just go back to last season and I felt like, you know, when you saw Newcastle win and them down the road win the trophy and everybody else, a lot of people sat here and said, it doesn't matter about silverware. Trophy's a trophy. You need to win kind of something. I think that might be true, but I think, Tom, that would be a bit hypocritical of people to say then, because I think if Arsenal only win the League Cup or the FA Cup in May, they won't say what they said a year from now. But like, do you think a League Cup or an FA Cup in isolation is enough to suffice?
I think if it was one of those two, I still think I'd be disappointed, you know, come the end of the season. But mainly because, as I said right now, Arsenal are favourites for the league. You know, to be in this position, to see our rivals in the positions they're in, I feel as though I would be disappointed at the end of the season if Arsenal aren't champions. Because it's not just about this season for me. It's about the last 4 years, inclusive of this season. It's been building up to this. You know, that was why I was always so kind of like, patient in so many ways with those years of seeing, because even though it was a surprise in 22-23 when we competed for the first time, and then in 23-24 we took things a step further and looked, you know, almost destined that season to go on and win it if it wasn't for City replicating and then bettering a ridiculous run of form in the second half of the campaign.
Yep.
The last season where Arsenal had to overcome, you know, challenges they've never faced before in that volume of, I think, 27 separate injuries, and still managed to finish second somehow and get to 2 cup semi-finals. I look at this season and go, we've paid our dues, we've done our business, we've set ourselves up to succeed. And so if
100.
we don't succeed in the league, it has to go down as a failure, I think. And so it's not to say that means for me Arteta goes, because I think I'm trying to piece together how we don't win it this season at this point. Like where we are right now, if Arsenal aren't to win it, what has to happen? And for me, what has to happen for Arsenal to not win the league from this point isn't anything with like Arteta messing up his tactics or players not doing X, Y, and Z. It would have to be something worse than last season happens to us this season. And that would be catastrophic. But if you're looking at the volume of injuries we've had at the beginning of this season, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Arsenal could get 27 separate injuries again or more, because we've already had, I think we're already into double figures and we're only 11 games in. So, and we've dealt with that incredibly well, but it's the start of the season. The players have the most kind of energy levels that they're going to have. And in 3-4 months' time, those energy levels are going to be much lower. The fatigue's going to be much higher. The lactic acid's going to be building up each week. And you're thinking, are we able to sustain this? And now I want to see, obviously, in the next phase of the season starts after the international break, when Havertz, Odegaard, Madueke, all these players return, amongst others as well, how Arteta manages the festive period. Are we still top at Christmas? Do we still have a buffer at Christmas? Those are big questions that need to be answered. It's exciting to have these players coming back. And if they do come back, I don't think Arsenal necessarily need to do any business in January, because I think we'll have a big enough squad if everybody is fit. But it will depend upon what things look like then. So, yeah, look, I think from an Arsenal point of view, if it was to be just a League Cup or an FA Cup, while I would celebrate those greatly, I'd still look upon the season and go, we should have been champions this season.
I'm with you, Thomas. Like, I'll take any trophy. I think these boys have done bloody well. I think they need to win trophies and like get a taste of it. I think that's where we're at now, and things of that ilk. But I would be disappointed, specifically if we don't win the Prem. Champions League, like you said, like You know, we've got to a quarters, we've got to a semis. We are one of the better teams in Europe. We're maybe not the biggest and baddest, but I kind of think the champs is one you play it by ear. You just concentrate on the league phase. You just deal with who you get, and then it kind of is what it is, really and truly. And I think there's plenty of positive and negatives we can learn from Real Madrid and PSG. Premier League, I can see it really. FA Cup, I always want it. League Cup, you never know what that could do for you in Wembley if you win it in February, on top of what we're doing and the boost that could give us. And I need to ask you this as well. Maybe I'm getting a bit too confident, but do you think we can win multiple honors? Like that could be, you know, the two domestic ones in the two domestic cups. That could be a Prem and a domestic one. That could be what I think everyone would want in the Prem and the champs. Like, am I wrong for thinking maybe 2 trophies could land?
I don't think you're wrong at all. No, I think if you look at League Cup, you know, at the moment, the quarterfinal still has Arsenal, Newcastle, Man City, Chelsea are the kind of the 4 bigger teams, and all of them are playing teams that you would expect them to beat. You know, you'd expect us like we did last season. It's funny how it's kind of replicated the same quarterfinal as last season for us, with Palace. But you'd expect us to win that game, especially with the week they've got. They've got Conference League, then Leeds away, then us in the space of 6 days. So you should be looking at Arsenal with a week's rest before they go to Everton, with no midweek, you know, responsibilities. We should be expected to go to another semi-final. It sucks the semi-final's 2 legs. It shouldn't be 2 legs. We know that.
Ridiculous.
But we've got a good squad that at that point, and even by the time we play Palace, hopefully Havertz and maybe even Jesus and, you know, Odegaard and Madueke should be back by that point. So we've got a squad that can hopefully cope with that and can, you know, attack that competition. It's a competition I look at always with an edge to it. I feel as though it's a competition only worth winning if you win it with other trophies. I think it's a competition that elevates your success if you've also won it alongside other things. If you win it in isolation, it's never really that much of an accolade to point to and go, look at the trophy we won. It's one of those where you want to go, look at the trophies that we won with the League Cup involved in that. I think that's when you can look at the League Cup as a successful kind of point of reference as winning it, even though Arsenal's record in the competition goes back a long, long way. And it'd be nice to end that kind of lengthening time and drought that we haven't had success in the competition. But I think it's still one of those that only has relevance and kind of prestige, if you like, if, as I say, you win it alongside other things. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right to want multiple honours this season, and this team and this manager, I think, is worthy of that in this single season.
I hope they can, man. And Tom, it's one of those things where, you know, again, from a professional point of view, it's not really going to make sense. But when I look at the amount of players year in, year out that participate in all these competitions and go throughout their careers, it's actually not that many players that win honours. And as a player, there's no guarantees to win trophies. Of course, depending on the club you're at, you might, you know, get some. But yeah, like I wouldn't be against winning it. But I think you're bang on the money in the sense that I always say, like, nobody cares about the League Cup until you win it. If we win, our trophy's a trophy, Arsenal won the trophy, blah, blah, blah. And the same goes for other clubs. If you lose it, if you don't win it, like what we would say and other people would say, oh, it's the League Cup, it's not one of the majors, etc. Like you said, it elevates your success. And I kind of like stealing your point a bit. I think it kind of builds winning mentality. I look at the amount of times, you know, Pep won it. I think Klopp won it a couple of ones. I think we could kind of go down that kind of avenue and it could help us, if I'm honest with you. I want to skip back to this question on screen, yeah, or not even this question, yeah. Arsenal fans, and I want to be respectful to the word PTSD, but quote unquote, Arsenal fans have PTSD. And I think this season is a bit of a weird one, even me to a degree. Like, I believe in what we're doing, but it's almost like the better we get, the more we're just dealing with the business. It's not that you're scared, but you're like, oh, is this too good to be true kind of thing? Where are you at on that? Because I know I'm not explaining it well, but you as an Arsenal fan, you know what I'm alluding to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the phrase, the acronym that comes up in my chat box a lot. And, you know, I think in a metaphorical sense, it is very appropriate to describe kind of, you know, what Arsenal fans have dealt with in the last few years. And it's a struggle to believe that we're going to do it when we've obviously failed and slipped in doing it so many seasons. And it's also like in 2025, social media and the kind of the rival fan environment that we live in, Arsenal have that bottling tagline alongside them, and that's what we have pointed towards. Until we end that, you know, we're going to continue to do it. We've got to shake it off, as you're absolutely right. And I think that Arsenal have got the capacity to do this season. I think that what's good is that we as fans feel it a lot more than the players do. And I think that's important, because I think if the players felt it, and I know for a fact that they don't, they obviously are aware of like what Arsenal haven't and have come so close to doing in previous seasons. But I think they're very good at kind of putting results and seasons behind them that they didn't get what they want from, and to go again. You think about last season, the Champions League semi-final, incredibly painful moment in Paris. I think that this season shows you how we've started. This season shows you how quickly they've moved on from that huge disappointment of the Champions League semi-final and have moved into this season where they've won every single Champions League game to nothing, and they're going to go and face a Bayern side, which will be a really good litmus test. It's a shame that that game falls between Spurs and Chelsea, because I actually think we should prioritise the league games and rotate for Bayern. We don't need to win. We don't even necessarily even need to draw that game against Bayern, because we've won our opening 4 Champions League games. The likelihood is, with the games we've got left, we will finish in the top 8 relatively comfortably. But I still think it's a good litmus test, that Bayern game, for this squad. They will be without Luis Diaz. They will be without some other players that are injured. I think we should be able to take the game to them in the Emirates. So those 3 games, and it links into the question of the PTSD thing. If Arsenal can come through those 3 games with 3 wins, or maybe even 2 wins and a draw in the Bayern game, maybe, I think that would really ease fans' kind of concerns, especially if City and Liverpool have further slips in these weeks. I think City go to Newcastle next, which is obviously a very difficult game. They are without Dan Burn, which is a big loss. He got suspended in the game against Brentford, unfortunately. But I guess, it's just one of those things where you got to try and keep fingers crossed that other teams can start doing Arsenal more favours than they already have done with Liverpool, but more so now with City.
I want to ask you as well, obviously, because of your line of work, you see it at the forefront, and I don't know where this has come from. I think people, I'm not suggesting we're the most entertaining team in the world, but to compare us to Stoke in all aspects, not defensively, I think it's ridiculous. What do you make of this tag about Arsenal not being entertaining? Because for me personally, I don't really care about your entertainment if you don't support Arsenal Football Club. We're at that point of kind of like, by hook or by crook, we need to get over the line. And I do think when people sit there, I'm not saying we're the most entertaining team. I don't feel our attack has clicked yet, but maybe I'm wrong. But when I use my eyes, you can't tell me this team's boring to watch, but everyone's allowed an opinion. So that's why I'm asking you, like, where do you stand on this entertainment tag? Or Arsenal don't move me, they're not an entertaining team to watch?
So what people need to understand is that Arsenal have the most engaged fan base in the world, for me, in terms of kind of social media and clicks and views, and what club globally at present, right now, on a social aspect, has more attention than Arsenal. I think you're struggling to find somebody. And I know that Real Madrid and Barcelona have incredibly engaged fan bases globally, but from a media standpoint, the club that gets the most attention, that gets, alongside Manchester United being the other one, is Arsenal. And so if Arsenal are doing really good, that's difficult to gain kind of discussion around. When you're doing well, isn't as entertaining, as engaging as when things aren't going as well. Being able to laugh at Man United since Sir Alex Ferguson left has been one of the most privileged things as a rival fan that we've been able to enjoy. And all of the content around that, and the point where fans are growing their hair out until they win 5 games in a row. Like, these things just...
He's in trouble.
He's in trouble. He's going to be donating a lot of hair to charity at the end of when that fund finally comes to an end. But when with Arsenal, because Arsenal have been so good for so many years, even though they've not won anything, that element of the not winning something, and now, of course, when they're so consistent this season and they look such strong favourites for the league,
facts.
It's basically been like this cultivation of an idea of what can we now get Arsenal fans to engage.
Where can we move the goalpost to now?
Where can we spark the rage bait? Where can we spark the attention? And that has been what it is for this season. It has been, well, they're scoring a lot of set piece. They're not more set piece goals than open play goals, but they are scoring a lot of set piece goals. They are scoring, of course. They have kind of introduced, they did really spawn the long throw things. The PSG game was the first time I really noticed long throws being used as much
Thomas Partey.
For a team like Arsenal. Exactly, Thomas Partey, when he's doing that. And so they've kind of been the team that's been labelled as the trendsetters for that, even though other teams have done it for a while, but they've done it as one of the bigger sides more than
look at Brentford
other.
With long throws, as you mentioned it. Big up them as well. Like, it's all about fine margins. You should do that. That's where football's moved to. Like, set pieces are deciding things week in, week out, but it's just us.
I think people get annoyed at the inevitability of Arsenal as well. Like, football's meant to be this unpredictable sport that you can't tell, and anything can happen in a game. And it'd be like Arsenal get a corner kick, and it's almost feeling like you've got a penalty at times. It's certainly,